Miami Hurricanes stay red hot on the recruiting trail. They've already landed 2 blue chippers in football this week, and they're projected to take another player out of Dabo Swinney's recruiting class, and they land a 5-star in basketball.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. We'll talk about Miami's Keys versus the SMU Mustangs, 12 noon. Finally get a noon game tomorrow. By the way, we're going to have our ACC weekend viewing guide. Who are we rooting for and rooting against this weekend? We'll talk about Akheem Mesidor's status for Saturday. He didn't play last week due to injury, and we'll take a look at that injury report. There's a lot of guys on the SMU injury report, by the way. Miami looks very, very healthy. But, folks, it's already been a huge week in football and now in basketball recruiting. Miami, in back-to-back nights on Tuesday and Wednesday, landed 4-star football commits. 4-star wide receiver Milan Paris, 6'5.5", 200-plus pounds, becomes the 4th wide receiver in Miami's class of 2026, blue chip guy. And then the following day, Miami flipped from Clemson, 4-star defensive lineman Keshawn Stancil, who I'm really, really, really excited about. Miami's doing big things in defensive line recruiting. And as we've talked about on this show, flipping guys from Clemson is historically not a very easy thing to do because once you verbally commit to Dabo Swinney, Dabo really puts you on lockdown. He's got stipulations. He threatens to pull your scholarship if you take visits other places. In the case of Stancil, that was a player who I'm not exactly sure why he verbally committed to Clemson in the first place. I know that their defensive line was expected to be really, really, really good this year, and it's not, whereas Miami's defensive line is legitimately one of the top units in the entire country, if not the top unit in the entire country, if you go by grades and pressures and run defense and all of that stuff. So Stancil is seeing the proof, like on the field. He is seeing what the coaching from the likes of Damian Lewis and Jason Taylor have done. And so the 6'4", 280-pounder decided to flip his commitment from Clemson to Miami. And folks, Miami might be on the verge of getting another one who was formerly committed to Dabo, which I think is a sign of the times. That Clemson's trajectory right now and the old school nature of the way Dabo Swinney does things is maybe not as appealing on the recruiting trail, and the performances they put on the field this season are not as appealing as they used to be. So 3-star safety Blake Stewart, who's a really good player out of a really good high school and a really good district. He's in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a hotbed for football, Woodward Academy. 6 foot tall, 175-pound safety. He is the 35th ranked safety in the entire class of 2026, the 46th rated player out of the state of Georgia, which of course is a football recruiting hotbed. So Blake Stewart was, up until 4 days ago, he was verbally committed to Clemson. He backed off of that verbal pledge on October 27th. So, if this does happen for Miami, I would call this a flip, but it has not happened yet. However, when it comes to Blake Stewart, who's someone who made an official visit to Miami back in June before he committed to Clemson back in July, this player has been a priority. This is someone that Miami, through their evals and their scouting, has always thought really, really highly of as they try to bring in what could be a truly elite defensive back class of 2026. They've got a lot more corners than safeties committed, so Blake Stewart at safety is someone who I think has been a priority for Miami in recruiting. And so Blake, and again, thought highly enough of Miami to take an official visit here back in June, despite not committing right away. I'm sure the communication has kept going between the parties. Now, the Stewart thing is interesting because he's, as of yesterday, as of Thursday, predictions started to come in Miami's favor. Steve Wiltfong, the Grim Reaper, dropped a Fong bomb for Stewart to become a Miami Hurricanes verbal commit in, the future, hopefully the near future, because we'd love to keep it hot with the week that we've had so far. I think 24/7 Sports has now put in a crystal ball prediction as well for Stewart to end up at Miami. And it's, the last several days have been very interesting there because right after his decommit from Clemson, I think that came right after or right around the time of a reported visit to Vanderbilt. And Vandy, of course, they're having a great year. They've been one of the best stories in college football this season. So right around a reported visit to Vandy when he, decommitted from Clemson, Vandy seemed to have a lot of heat, and there was a lot of buzz. Blake Stewart, Miami is in the mix, but it looks like Vanderbilt is the spot. But as of Thursday, it all seems to be going in Miami's favor when it comes to the predictions and the crystal balls and all that. So it looks like the Hurricanes may be on the verge. We've got 25 verbal commits right now in the 12th rated class of 2026. Stewart's a guy who could probably push us, I think, into 11th if we can get this done. But again, it hasn't happened yet, but it is projected that Blake Stewart could be the next Miami Hurricanes commit after what's been a good wave this week. Defensive lineman Stancil on Wednesday, Milan Paris, the wide receiver, on Tuesday, both four-star standout players, and Miami could be adding another really, really good player in the near future. But, for as much as we talk about just the incredible work that Mario Cristobal and his staff have been doing on the recruiting trail, I see you, Jay Lucas, the Miami basketball coach, who, listen, I know, obviously had high-level recruiting exposure during his time as the top assistant coach at the Duke Blue Devils, highest profile basketball program in the country, arguably. Did a bang-up job recruiting for Duke, and then a lot of people wondered, okay, well, you take him out of Duke, and he's never been a head coach before. Can he recruit the same way in Miami that he was recruiting in Durham? The answer to that so far seems to be yes. He's been able to pull 5 stars for the 2025 class, and now he's got a 5-star verbally committed in the class of 2026, which comes in the form of elite local player from Miami Columbus, Caleb Gaskins, 5-star basketball prospect, had his official announcement. He and his family, it was really cool to watch them throw up that U and put up the U gear. So Caleb Gaskins chooses the Miami Hurricanes over Ole Miss, Florida, defending national champs, in Texas A&M. According to Kane Sport, he took official visits to Miami, Florida, and A&M, and took an unofficial visit to the Hurricanes back in June. Gaskins said at his commitment ceremony, quote, "I'll be attending the University of Miami. I chose Miami because I would like to mention Jay Lucas." He said his love for me, and he recruited me as hard as he can. He definitely sold it. They have an incredible staff. This year, even in their first year, I'm excited, he says. He says, "I'm close to home at UM, some feeling of comfortability there. Everyone can step outside their doorstep and watch me whenever they want," they said. So 5-star prospect, number 7 overall player, 3rd best small forward in the entire class. And this young man has taken his talents to the University of Miami basketball team. So we got some recruiters in Coral Gables. We've already known this about Mario Cristobal, and now for the past several months that Jay Lucas has been in the office, we're learning this about the basketball coach as well. So I am really excited to see, this year, and obviously Caleb Gaskins won't be playing this year, but how Miami can do should be probably even more competitive ACC than it was last year, how they can do this year and how they can do moving forward. But we'll get back to football when we come back, because the injury reports are out, the Thursday nighter, and Miami got some very good news. SMU, it's a mixed bag. Got SMU on Saturday, high noon in Dallas. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. And I'll tell you what moved the game forward last week. Miami needed that win badly against Stanford. They finished strong, they started slow, but I thought the plays that sparked Miami's big second half on offense were a couple of punt returns, 31 yards and 42 yards by Malachi Toney, who's probably been Miami's best offensive player this season. Malachi Toney moved the game forward for the Hurricanes, also had a great receiving game as well. And folks, when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure to check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will be back later on today. We'll take a look at the upcoming weekend. We'll talk more about James Franklin, possibly to Virginia Tech, and all of our football predictions for Saturday and Friday night. We got a Friday night game this week as well, North Carolina against Syracuse. So you want to keep it Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts, and available free on YouTube. All right, so the Hurricanes will try to win their third ACC game. Miami with a 2-1 conference record. SMU just suffered their first conference loss a week ago in a surprising defeat against Wake Forest, where nothing went right. SMU was impotent offensively last week, which is not necessarily a common thing for a Rhett Lashley offense. Their defense played great, but they turned 5 takeaways into 0 points last week, and they gave up a game-winning 50-yard field goal to Wake Forest. So SMU came off a really, really poor performance, and you figure Miami's going to be their Super Bowl. If there's a bounce-back game for them, it's this week, homecoming. Their stadium is completely sold out. I have no doubt SMU is going to play a lot better, but I still have faith in Miami that with Miami's talent level and Miami's physicality and Miami's health this week compared to SMU, that even if SMU does play a lot better than they played a week ago, it's not going to be enough against our Hurricanes. So let's take a look at the Thursday night ACC injury report. There is nothing notable on the Miami side. Every player who's currently listed as out and the 2 players who are currently listed as questionable have been guys who have appeared on this injury report week after week, and none of them are high-volume contributors to the team. Like, there is nobody on Miami's injury report that is like, we're going to be without this guy who plays a lot. Like, there are no significant injuries on the Miami side. And the most notable absence from that injury report is edge rusher Akheem Mesidor. So Akheem did not play last week against Stanford. We saw the results on the field. That was a game where you could afford to be without Akheem Mesidor. Mario Cristobal said he was very close. He did go through some warm-ups last week, but it was essentially a game-time decision not to play him. And Cristobal said on Monday that Akheem is going to be good for this week. And I will take a couple of factors here. The fact that he's not on Miami's injury report, that's first sign that Akheem should be back and playing this week. And Akheem was also named a captain this week. So, unless there's really terrible communication, which I don't think is the case, you're not going to name a guy a captain for this week if he's probably not going to play. So it looks like Akheem Mesidor is going to be back. And, Ruben Bain did a really good job. He graded over 90 last week and had 6 quarterback pressures even without Mesidor. And, on the other side, Miami got decent production from Marquise Lightfoot, and Armando Blunt had a sack in the game. So Miami's defensive line was more than good enough without Mesidor last week, but he's going to be a lot more needed this week. Now, if you look at the SMU injury report, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of their key players are either questionable or probable, which, I guess gives them a little bit of hope that they're going to have, virtually, a lot of their guys in the game, but a lot of them are going to be injured and limited. So you're going to see some familiar names on here. In the questionable column, you have the likes of Chris Johnson Jr., former Miami running back who's having a good season there. He got banged up against Wake Forest. So, questionable, I guess I take that to mean 50-50. So I don't know if we're going to see Chris go up against his former Miami teammates or not. Defensive end Cameron Robertson, safety Tyron Pauley, and tight end Matthew Hibner, who's a really good player. On the probable list, these are guys you would expect to play but could be limited. Both of SMU's top receivers are banged up but probable. Jordan Hudson and Romello Brinson, who's a former Miami receiver. Those are their top two guys. They got some defensive tackles on their injury report, Terry Webb and Jeffrey Emba, both really good players that are a big part of that really good run-stopping unit that they have. Their quarterback, Kevin Jennings, is probable. Now, Jennings is definitely going to play, but he's been hobbled for most of the season. So it doesn't seem to affect his arm that much. He's got great arm talent, but it's affected his mobility. So that's something we're going to look out for. He may not be at full strength. R.J. Maryland, who's a player, never played at Miami, but he's got a Miami connection because he's the son of Miami legend Russell Maryland. So there are, up and down that SMU roster, you got coaches. Rhett Lashley, former Miami offensive coordinator, here's their head coach. De'Aaron King, former Miami quarterback, is on that staff. Reggie Bain, the brother of Reuben Bain, is on that SMU staff. So they got a lot of guys. One thing I was curious about is I don't see anywhere on their injury report offensive lineman Logan Parr, who I thought was banged up. But if he's not questionable, probable, or out, that's really good news for SMU because Parr is one of the most important players on their team. I don't see him on there anywhere. So they do have a lot of players who are, maybe possible late scratches or not going to be at full strength, but it appears their top offensive lineman is not one of those. So, bottom line, on the injury front, Miami looks a lot better right now than SMU does when it comes to who's healthy and who's not. All right, so let's take a look at my keys to the game before we go to our viewing guide for the weekend. So keys to the game for me in this one. I'm going to go with this one first because I strongly believe that if Miami doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, they're going to come out of Dallas with a dub. Right? I mean, you think about the one game that Miami lost this year. It came down to a possible game-winning drive, despite the fact that before that potential game-winning drive, your quarterback had thrown 3 interceptions at that point. He threw the 4th to seal the game for Louisville, and you had committed 9 penalties for almost a full football field's worth of yards. And then Miami still, despite how bad they played, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Miami did not play well against Louisville, but despite how badly they played, they were still, a first down or 2 away, maybe from putting themselves in position to get into the end zone, or they were in position for a game-tying field goal that would have sent it to overtime. So I start with the self-inflicted stuff. Penalties and turnovers need to stay down. Miami had a better game penalty-wise, 5 for 30 against Stanford. That's acceptable. But, you want to keep that number, the yardage and the number of penalties down as possible because some of these penalties for Miami have been momentum killers, drive killers, or drive extenders for the other team. It's inexcusable. As far as the turnovers go, you're going to be tested in this game. Like SMU, statistically, their defense overall is very good. Their passing defense statistically is awful, 133rd in the country out of 134 FBS teams, but they've got 12 interceptions and 8 fumble recoveries on the year. They have turned over opponents 20 times this year. So they have been opportunistic. They have read the eyes of opposing quarterbacks very well. So Carson Beck needs to make sure he's taking care of that football. I think Miami can and will take shots down the field in this game. But let's try to keep the interceptions down, please. And the penalties, it's just so obvious. And also, it's very clear that officials are not interested in calling penalties against Miami's opponents. Miami opponent penalties for Miami, dead last, 17th in the ACC, and I think 115th or 120th nationally. So the officials are not calling penalties. Reuben Bain gets held on every play, and officials are not calling any of them. So unfortunately, that means Miami has to be just about perfect when it comes to not committing penalties because you're not going to get those called on the other side. So penalties and turnovers down, that's my number one key. I mentioned SMU's passing defense. My second key is to exploit that. The Mustangs rank 133rd nationally. So exploit their passing defense, get multiple receivers involved. I want to see a continuation of the Stanford game where, Malachi Toney can, will, and should make plays in every single game. CJ Daniels has made and should continue to make plays in every single game. But when you start mixing in Tony Johnson, Josh Moore, maybe even JoJo Trader, who got 22 snaps in the game last week, even if he wasn't targeted, he's getting on the field more often. Elijah Lofton, I'd like to see him get more opportunities in the passing game, get more receivers involved, and just try to exploit, again, a passing defense that has been gashed to the tune of 304 yards plus on average per game this year. Try to exploit that. That's number two. My third key, and this is always going to be something Miami's going to try to do because it sets up so many other things. Establish a running game. Try to wear down SMU's defense and set up play action. Carson Beck, his numbers are elite in play action situations. Now, establishing a running game, at times you're just going to have to commit to it, even if it's not necessarily picking up chunk plays every time, because SMU's defense, that's what they do best, is stop the run. They rank 15th nationally in rushing defense, giving up 95 yards per game. So under 100 yards given up per game. But it's one of those things. I know you guys, you get upset when Shannon Dawson, with the way he calls the running game and all that, but you're going to have to. And if you do put more wrinkles and variations into it and get Malachi Toney involved on jet sweeps, I'm good with all of that. But you're going to stick to the running game in this game because it's Miami's personality, their physical profile. Try to wear down the opposing defensive line to help you out in the third and fourth quarters. And if you can have success in the running game this week, it's going to help set up play action as well. So establishing a running game is big, and that's going to be a fun matchup. SMU's defensive line is the strength of their team. Miami's offensive line is one of the strengths of their team. I'd say both lines of scrimmage for Miami. So the battle between Miami's O-line and SMU's D-line is going to be a lot of fun. And lastly, pressure Kevin Jennings. It's just Miami has consistently pressured opposing quarterbacks all year. Now, when Jennings is like fully healthy and at his best, he's a dual threat. I'm not sure how much the threat is going to be dueling this weekend, though, but he's still got a lot of arm talent. Like Kevin Jennings he's not Thomas Castellanos, who is only dangerous when he's, running around like a pinball. In the case of Kevin Jennings, he's also got great arm talent, but he's probably not going to be as mobile as he usually is because he's been injured. I think it's an ankle he's been nursing throughout the season. So create that pressure, make his life uncomfortable as possible in his home stadium, and hopefully Ruben Bain, Akheem Mesidor, and company can get home and create some sacks. Because, again, he's probably not going to be as two-dimensional as he would be when he's fully healthy. So those are my keys to the game. Now, if Miami's going to get to that ACC championship game, and if they're going to get to the college football playoff, they not only need to win out. Every game is a playoff game for Miami, but, there are certain other situations around the country where you want a little help. There are some teams you want to lose this weekend. We'll have our ACC viewing guide when we come back. You want to keep it right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, the weekend is here, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for your Miami Hurricanes. Guys, Ruben Bain all season long has been delivering in a big way. Even when the sacks have not been there, he is the top-graded defensive player in the entire country, one of the top-graded rushing defenders in the country. And Ruben Bain, even in a game where he did not record a sack last week against Stanford, had 6 quarterback hurries in the game. He has been an absolute menace, and he's someone Rhett Lashley and his staff are going to have to game plan against. So Ruben Bain comes through for your Hurricanes. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, that performance wasn't a fluke. Bain has been on a hot streak. And just like Ruben Bain delivers for the Canes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every time you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. We are also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet when that wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. So we'll be all over this on Locked On ACC as well later on today. But there are, Miami with one loss in the ACC. They do not control their own destiny for the ACC championship game. Now, we expect if Miami goes 11-1, they more than likely are in the college football playoff, even if you miss the ACC championship game. But I'd like to have my cake and eat it too. Miami's never won this stupid conference in over 20 years. I would love to get to the ACC title game this year. So you look at other ACC games this weekend. Tonight, Friday night, this game doesn't really affect us. North Carolina, who's 0-3 in the ACC, takes on Syracuse, who's 1-4. Now, Miami does play Syracuse next week. So, I don't know if would you prefer for them to win this game? Or maybe if they lose the game, they might be angrier. But Miami should wipe the floor with Syracuse. Syracuse has been bad since their quarterback, Steve Angeli, got hurt. Ricky Collins, their backup, has been awful this year. I think it just comes down to you root for whichever team you hate less. People love to watch Bill Belichick fail. They haven't won a Power 4 game yet. A lot of Miami fans don't like Fran Brown, the Syracuse coach. So I don't know. I guess you root against whoever you dislike more. Syracuse is favored by 2.5 points at home, but this game doesn't affect Miami's outlook one way or the other, outside of the fact that we do play Syracuse this year. Duke at Clemson. You may want to root for Dabo. And you know what? They've already taken a recruit from Dabo this week. They're trying to steal another one. So maybe we go easy on Dabo this week and we root for Clemson to beat Duke, because Duke also has one ACC loss like Miami. They're 3-1. So, you don't necessarily want it to come down to a tiebreaker that you have no control over. So it's better for Miami if Clemson wins this game and hands Manny Diaz and Duke their second conference loss. So, and of course, this is all assuming Miami keeps winning, right? Miami's got to keep winning, but if these other teams lose, they can help them out. Same deal with Virginia Tech hosting 16th-ranked Louisville. Not only does Louisville only have one conference loss, they've got a tiebreaker against Miami. So you root for Virginia Tech, who at 2-2 in the ACC, not a very good team. They're not a threat to win the ACC this year, and Miami plays them head-to-head later on this season. You root for Virginia Tech against Louisville. Louisville's favored by 10.5 points at the Hokies, by the way. 12th-ranked Notre Dame plays at Boston College. You root for Notre Dame. As painful as it is to say that, right? Because if Notre Dame, if they win out at 10-2, they're going to be in the college football playoff. And with Miami having the head-to-head win over them, Notre Dame winning is not only better for Miami's strength of schedule, but if Notre Dame gets into the playoff, it's almost impossible to keep Miami out of the playoff at 11-1 if the Hurricanes win out. So for logical reasons, you root for Notre Dame against Boston, and Notre Dame is favored by 4 touchdowns. They should destroy them. Pittsburgh against Stanford. Pitt is favored by 2 touchdowns, but you root for Stanford because Pittsburgh is 4-1 in the ACC. You want them to suffer their second conference loss. It helps Miami in the standings. 15th ranked Virginia at Cal. Virginia favored by 5.5 on the road. You root big time for the Golden Bears. So Virginia, they might just, if they win out, they're in the ACC championship game. They might take Miami's spot there. You root for Cal to give UVA a conference loss. Same thing for NC State. NC State is hosting number 8 Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's undefeated, 8-0 overall, 5-0 in the ACC. You root for NC State to give Georgia Tech a conference loss. You root for chaos there. And then, you got Wake Forest at Florida State. Both these teams are not a threat to win the ACC. I root for Wake Forest just because it's fun to watch Florida State lose. So that's where we're at on your ACC rooting guide for this weekend. By the way, we're going to have another episode today We're going to have the postcast king, Jim Greasehaber, on. We'll get his keys to the game. We'll give you our final predictions. I did drop my prediction yesterday. I'll double down on it this afternoon. So make sure you join us again on another episode of Locked On Canes. We'll be back later today right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.